Islam is probably the most misunderstood religion in the world, and especially in the West. Over the last 11 years, I've spent 3 of them in 9 different Muslim-majority countries, from Indonesia and Oman to Turkey and Morocco. And I've realized just how little I knew about Islam before, and also how different it is from what most people think. So in this video, I want to share 10 things I've learned about Islam from traveling and living in Muslim countries, starting with the most basic ones, and at the end, some things that most Muslims might not even know. Number 1, Islam and Christianity are way more similar than most people think. Growing up in the US, all I knew about Islam was the racist caricatures of Muslim terrorists. A guy named Ahmed who screams Allahu Akbar.
Silence! I kill you!
But once I started learning about Islam, I began to realize just how similar it is to Christianity. Muslims also believe in Jesus, known as the Prophet Isa, not as God's son, but as one of the greatest prophets, and they believe that he performed miracles, raised the dead, and will return in the end times to save humanity. Mary, the mother of Jesus, is actually mentioned more times in the Quran than in the New Testament, and she even has an entire chapter named after her, Surat Maryam. Most Christians know that there are 12 tribes of Israel, the son of Abraham, but most don't know that Abraham's first son and Jacob or Israel's older brother Ishmael also had 12 sons, and these make up the 12 tribes of Ishmael, which are important in Islam, and Arabs are believed to be descended from these grandsons of Abraham. I think this information is important because it makes Islam feel less foreign. It's simply another branch of the same tree. Number 2. If you've ever taken a world religions class, you've probably heard of the 5 pillars of Islam. They're basically the foundation of Islam, the 5 core practices that every Muslim tries to live by. The first one is called Shahada, which means the declaration of faith. It's pretty simple. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger. It's kind of like the Islamic version of the Apostles' Creed, and plays a similar role to Christian baptism. It's how you show your faith to God and join the religion. Then there's Salah, which is the 5 daily prayers. At first, I thought praying that many times a day sounded intense, but when you see it in practice, it's actually very peaceful. In places like Indonesia or Morocco, I'd hear the call to prayer echo through the streets, and everything would just pause for a few minutes. It reminded me how rarely we actually stop to take a breath during the day, and for Muslims, that's built into daily life. I've also always admired the dedication required for Muslims to carve that much time out of their day to spend time talking to God. And they have a ritual washing called wudu that they're supposed to do before praying to clean themselves physically and spiritually before entering God's presence. The third pillar is zakat, which is alms or charity, and it requires giving 2.5% of your wealth every year to help those in need. But I won't go into it too much now because I'll talk about it more in the next point. The fourth pillar is Sawm, fasting during the month of Ramadan. I've been in Muslim countries during Ramadan a few times, and honestly, it's one of the most beautiful experiences. Even if you're not fasting, you can feel this collective sense of discipline and unity. Fasting for an entire month seems like one of the most difficult parts of Islam for me. So I was surprised to see that virtually everybody does it. Even the Muslims who normally drink and go out to party and do other things that are considered against the rules, change and stop doing those things during Ramadan, which I thought was very interesting. And finally, there's Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. Most Muslims only do it once in their life, if they can afford it, but it's the ultimate act of humility. Millions of people sacrificing a lot to make the pilgrimage of a lifetime, all wearing the same simple clothes, standing side by side to worship together regardless of wealth or status. It's hard not to be moved by that idea. One of the pillars that I admire most is zakat. So next is number 3, Islam's wealth tax. Every Muslim who can afford it and has their basic needs met is expected to give 2.5% of their net worth each year to help those in need. And the Quran even specifies who that money should go to: the poor, the orphans, the widows, people in debt, the elderly, travelers who are stranded, and to help free slaves. Number 4, Muslims are more hospitable than any other group of people I've ever met. Almost everywhere I went, from tea in Morocco to dinner invitations in Indonesia, people were constantly offering food, tea, or help. That tradition actually goes back all the way to the 7th century, when the original Muslims were nomadic people living in the desert, where survival depended on helping travelers. Since then, it has become a core part of the faith and culture. Number 5, Islam is incredibly diverse. One thing that surprised me the most is just how different Islam looks from place to place. Religion and culture are so intertwined that it's almost impossible to separate them. In Indonesia, people might wear colorful batik sarungs to the mosque. In Morocco, they wear jalabas and drink mint tea. In Oman, they wear long white dishdashas and burn frankincense after Friday prayers. In Turkey, people still gather for Eid, but many people don't wear hijabs or fast strictly during Ramadan. And in places like Bangladesh, men dye their hair and beards with henna, because it is believed that the Prophet Muhammad did as well. This even extends to Europe and sub-Saharan Africa, where places like Albania or Nigeria also have large Muslim populations. There are dozens of sects and traditions, Sunni, Shia, Sufi, Ibadi, and more, each with their own interpretations and ways of practicing Islam. Some Muslims pray 5 times a day, others pray 7. Some Muslims believe that music and dancing are bad, while others make them a big part of their lives. It's kind of beautiful to see how one religion can express itself in so many unique ways shaped by the culture and history of each place, which leads me to my next point. Number 6. You can be a religious Muslim and not wear the hijab. The hijab is probably one of the most misunderstood parts of Islam in the West. A lot of people think wearing it automatically makes someone more religious, but that's just not always true. In Indonesia, almost everyone wears the hijab. In Turkey, it's much less common. And I even have a Moroccan friend who considers herself very pious and is also a fitness content creator. She posts workout videos online like this every single week. The idea of wearing a hijab is actually only mentioned twice in the Quran, in Surat An-Nur and Surat Al-Ahzab, and it can be interpreted in many ways. And historically, the hijab is actually a relatively modern phenomenon. If you look at old photos from Iran or Indonesia in the 1950s and 60s, most women didn't wear it at all. Number 7. Here in the US, if you say the word Muslim, most people probably imagine somebody like this, or this. However, it might surprise a lot of people, but Arabs actually only make up about 15% of the global Muslim population. The 4 countries with the largest Muslim populations are actually Indonesia, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. And together those 4 countries make up about 40% of the world's Muslims. Now, number 8. This might also be surprising for a lot of people, but so much of what we think of as modern science or Western math actually came from Muslim scholars hundreds of years before the European Renaissance even started. Between the 8th and 13th centuries, what's known as the Islamic Golden Age, Muslim scholars were translating and building on Greek, Persian, and Indian knowledge, preserving it, and then pushing it way further. And this was happening at a time when most of Europe was still in the Dark Ages. In fact, the word algebra actually comes from the Arabic word al-jabr, from a book written by al-Khwarizmi, who also gave us the word algorithm. Ibn al-Haytham, often called the father of optics, was one of the first people to use real scientific experimentation, centuries before the term scientific method even existed. He studied how light enters the eye and figured out that vision works because light reflects into the eye and not out of it, which people had believed for hundreds of years. Then there's Al-Karaji, who worked with the binomial theorem long before Pascal, and Omar Khayyam, who solved cubic equations using geometric methods 500 years before Europe caught up. Muslims also invented the modern idea of hospitals, developed pharmacology, and even designed some of the first observatories for astronomy. In fact, modern words like chemistry and alcohol also come from Arabic. It's crazy because when you travel through places like Istanbul or Fez or Cairo, and you walk through these ancient universities and libraries, you realize just how much human knowledge was preserved and advanced by Muslim thinkers, long before Europe even knew it existed. So much of what we now call Western civilization actually stands on the shoulders of Muslim civilization, which is why it frustrates me so much when I hear people say Islamophobic things like, "What have Muslims ever invented?" The numbers you use are literally Arabic numerals, and Muslims invented algebra. Number 9. This next one blew my mind. When Christopher Columbus arrived in the Americas, the first language used to try to communicate with the indigenous people there was actually Arabic. He brought with him a translator named Luis de Torres, who was a Sephardic Jew forced to convert to Christianity during the Spanish Inquisition. He also spoke Arabic, because for centuries, Arabic had been one of the main trade languages across the Silk Road, India, and North Africa. And since Columbus thought he had landed in India, Arabic seemed like the most logical language to try first. And finally, number 10. Western meddling has created much of the radicalism that we see today. This is a complex topic, but it's impossible to ignore. Like my younger self in high school, most Christians and Westerners associate Islam with terrorism, but most of the radicalism we associate with the Muslim world today actually stems from Western interference, especially during the Cold War. The 1953 CIA coup in Iran, which overthrew the country's democratically elected leader, directly led to the Islamic Revolution decades later. Similar interventions revolutions happened in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Libya, fueling instability and extremism that still shape global politics today. If you're interested in going deeper, I'd highly recommend looking up the Wikipedia page on US involvement in regime change. It's pretty eye-opening. After spending years in Muslim countries, I've come to appreciate so many things about Islam. It's a way of reminding yourself 5 times a day to slow down, to be grateful, to give back, to remember that you're part of something bigger than yourself. And what struck me most was how human it all is. True Islam is not about governments or politics or headlines. It's about people trying to live with kindness, patience, and purpose. Everywhere I went, I saw people trying to be better, to forgive, to serve, and to love. When I first started traveling, I thought I was learning about different cultures. But if there's one thing that travel keeps teaching me, it's how similar we all are. That we are all human, how every faith in its own way is just a search for peace, meaning, and connection. So, if there's one thing I hope people take away from this, it's that Islam, like every other belief system, is made up of real people with families and hopes and dreams. And the more we see each other as humans first, the smaller the world starts to feel, and the more peaceful it becomes.